In this video, we're reviewing Predator Badlands and slicing through our soberness with a burning red cocktail called the Plasma Cutter. Today, on the Martini Shot. Hello and welcome to the Martini Shot, the home of movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails. Before we get into the review, let's whip ourselves up a drink. Predators have always had a lot of tools at their disposal. Nets, shurikens, Snapchat. No wait, that's a different kind of predator. But the one that gets the most play in Badlands is this sword with a glowing red edge that can cut through anything. Thus, this piece of tech is the inspiration for today's cocktail, as it's going to be bright red and pack a little bit of heat. But the heat we'll be working with here are those earthy spices, your cinnamon, your allspice, your ginger. It's going to give the cocktail a nice tingle that's also going to fit perfectly with the dropping temperatures as we make our way into the holiday season. And if you're looking for another Predator cocktail, I made a Predator blood drink a few years back that has a sweet and vegetal taste to it that I really loved. But before you check that out, let's get into this drink. Go ahead and grab yourself a cocktail shaker. First, we're gonna be starting with a little bit of fresh lime juice at ½ ounce, followed by 3/4 ounces of pomegranate juice, and just a splash of grenadine for color. And then next, I used a very specific type of simple syrup. I made this at home with the same kind of ratio you would expect from simple syrup, which is just 1 cup sugar to 1 cup water. But then I also added a teaspoon of allspice berries, a teaspoon of dried ginger root, and 2 cinnamon sticks. And then once everything's combined, you'll have this nice Christmas spice simple syrup. And with that, you're gonna be adding ½ ounce. And now for our alcoholic ingredients, first let's start with 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, ½ ounce of Benedictine, which is a herbal liqueur, and finally 2 ounces of spiced rum. And now you can go ahead and throw some ice in your shaker and shake to chill. Once you're done, go ahead and strain your cocktail into a tall glass. You can do it over ice if you prefer. And to give it a little bit more body, we're gonna be topping it up with some ginger beer. The spicier, the better. There you go, now you have the Plasma Cutter. Such a nice, warm, tingling sensation in your mouth with each sip. The bitterness that usually comes with the pomegranate juice is a bit more undercut, so you're getting a lot of that flavor, but you're not getting that pretty strong aftertaste that I know a lot of people don't like. And instead you're getting this nice richness that comes from that melding of both the spiced rum and that spiced simple syrup, which I think is even elevating those flavors that are already in the spiced rum. The Benedictine is a little bit more understated. You definitely have to be careful with that kind of stuff because it can overpower your cocktail, but you are getting a nice herbaceousness kind of underneath those spice notes that's really, really nice while not completely overtaking the other flavors of the cocktail. And the addition of the ginger beer not only gives it a little bit of body to it, but it also kind of brings out those other spice notes. It pairs so well with the cinnamon in that simple syrup, while also elevating that dried ginger root that's also in the syrup. Overall, this is a nice little holiday drink for sure. It's gonna give you a nice welcome spice in your cocktails without it being the more peppery spices that you're probably gonna find more of. And with the cocktail being bright red, you can make this for any holiday party and no one's gonna know that it's a Predator cocktail. But maybe we can use more Predator during the holiday season. Now that's a script idea. Now that we got our drink, let's get right into the review. You would think all director Dan Trachtenberg wanted out of life was a chance to get his hands on the Predator film franchise, because since getting the opportunity back in 2022, he has vice-gripped the thing and has not let go. It all started with Prey, a film that revitalized the franchise for me with its unique setup and fun characters. And even as recent as this past summer, Trachtenberg hit us with an animated anthology film, Predator, Killer of Killers. This took the concept of Prey and expanded upon it, throwing the brutal species against various cultures across different generations. It's clear Trachtenberg loves this series and absolutely has the stuff to give us great and exciting stories with this IP. Which brings us to Predator Badlands. It isn't exactly always doable to take a horror movie villain and put it in the driver's seat as a film's main character, but the Predators, or more accurately the Yautja, are a bit of a different breed. They have a culture, a hierarchy, and most importantly, an intelligence to them that leaves room for films to expand upon their rather narrow-minded setup. That's exactly what Badlands does, but just how well it worked is still kind of up in the air for me. Trachtenberg takes the franchise into uncharted territory with a plot centered around a disenfranchised hunter and his legless talking backpack. This pivots the horror action franchise into straight-up action-adventure territory, which can have varying effects. On one hand, it allows the Yacha to evolve and become more dissectable and personable than ever before, and on the other hand, I wonder if the species ever needed that. The admittedly fun but highly predictable Predator Badlands has me right down the middle here, entertaining me with its world building and set pieces, but numbing me with its overt attempts to make this the next big blockbuster franchise. Some of that grime and grit that was found in the past films, including Prey, is somewhat lost as it attempts to humanize the intergalactic killer that felt a little unnatural to me. Still, it's far from unwatchable, as there's plenty good to be found in the land of bad. Case in point, our main character. For the first time ever, the titular Predator feels like a fully realized character, given life and emotion I didn't think was possible by Demetrius Schuster Koloa-Montagu. As Dek, Demetrius brings an aura of youthful stubbornness to the species, as he portrays an outcast who is marked for death after being labeled a weakling. And don't worry, he doesn't learn that nonviolence is the answer or anything like that. It's not one of those movies. But we get to see the necessity of survival thrust upon him, something usually reserved for a predator's prey. Because of his inexperience, he not only has to rely on resourcefulness to survive a planet designed to kill him, but the help of others, as we come to learn. While the species' nature of violence isn't called into question, their methods are. Hunting alone, culling the weak from their tribes, things like that are called into question, and it honestly makes sense. You have a species that has perfected space travel, but hasn't been able to establish a functioning, thriving society because of its narrow-minded brutalness. Dek is the first to realize there's more to this life than just blind tradition, and while his journey through these realizations often feel quick and hollow for the sake of the story, they feel at least fresh for the franchise. Paired alongside Dek is Elle Fanning's Thea, a talkative, partially severed synthetic looking to make it back to her employers and her identical sister, Tessa. The combination of Dek and Thea is what really makes this film shine, sparking a slow building camaraderie between the two that originally blossoms out of necessity, but is later refined through respect. It's a real Shrek and Donkey dynamic here, if those two are willing to stab multiple creatures to death. Fanning's bubbly personality serves as a great foil to the quiet and stoic Dek, even bringing out a little bit of comedy from the Yautja that doesn't feel like total character assassination. There's also a funny little monkey creature, endearingly named Bud by Thea, who I have mixed feelings on. I don't think it's completely accurate to label Bud as a Baby Yoda type of character, one whose cuteness contradicts the savage world it lives in. But at the same time, it's very clear what the intention of having a character like this in the film is, and sometimes I feel as if that wasn't ultimately necessary. What I can admire, however, is all the thought and detail that was put into designing the planet most of the film takes place on. While it sometimes just looks like a drably shot New Zealand, there are some details that manage to give the world a lot more identity. A living forest with predatory, serpentine vines, a field of grass where the blades are literal blades, and slithering land eels that spit acid are just some of the wonders you'll find in the Badlands of Genna. For $100 million, it can look pretty impressive, though there are moments where you can see the budget being stretched to its limits. And for a PG-13 film, there is no skimping on brutal action sequences. It turns out the trick to making your PG-13 movie violent lies in reserving the brutality for giant CGI monstrosities or cyborgs that bleed white paste. There's plenty of hacking and slashing to be found here, though some of the set pieces are more engaging than others. Still, there's some inventive uses of the world that get hinted to early on that have terrific payoff in the climax, which is always a treat to see. So while I don't have an issue with humanizing the monster and having him go against type, I do think it could have been done in a less cutesy way. The aim was definitely to make this more crowd-pleasing, but not entirely in the way an underdog story allows. From the first few minutes, you know Dek is going to become disillusioned with his culture, and that's fine. But the found family angle just feels like playing it safe to me. This really only becomes an issue near the end, where I never really felt like Dek's progression from self-preservation to fighting to save the mother of a baby felt all that rewarding. It keeps in line with the outcast rising above their clan's idea of them that his past Predator films have leaned into, and while it's certainly subversive for this character, it is not for his body of work. It just kind of makes me think that not every franchise needs to be Star Wars or Marvel. There is a beauty in not giving audiences the tried and true formula they've grown accustomed to over the years. And that kind of feels like where this franchise is heading, which just doesn't interest me as much as what I thought Prey was setting up. I think a Predator team-up movie can still work, and make no mistake, it technically does here, but it's done so with a safety that I don't think the franchise ever really needed. If the IP was something new, I could probably get behind this, but because it's the Predator, I think it just doesn't work super well for me. So if you're looking for something that maybe does sci-fi adventure better than recent Star Wars offerings, but maybe not as inspired as the Avatar films, then maybe Predator Badlands will be your cup of tea. There's plenty to admire here, but not really enough to make me be doing backflips, eagerly awaiting the next ragtag adventure our characters get into. I trust Trachtenberg to keep making entertaining popcorn flicks, but I do hope there ends up being more to his work down the line that manages to reel me back in. What's Rawhead Rex up to? Maybe he can take a crack at that next. For my rating, I'm giving this film 3 skulls and spines out of 5. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Martini Shot. If you saw Predator Badlands, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. If you like what you saw here and would like to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me across all social media channels. Those links are down in the description below. If you enjoy movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails, be sure to check out my website, martinishot.blog. Until next time, thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Live deliciously, but please remember to drink responsibly.